Dear members of the Council, for more than 19 years, the Promo-LEX Association has been promoting democracy and human rights in the Republic of Moldova, including in the Transnistria region. We have expertise in several fields and we can present an objective image of the human rights situation. In the context of the third cycle of the Universal Periodic Review, the Promo-LEX Association, together with its national and international partners, assessed the degree of implementation of the UPR recommendation by the Government of the Republic of Moldova during 2016-2020. We will present you the main findings and the recommendations in the following areas: torture and ill treatment, human rights in the Transnistria region, drug laws and policies, hate speech and incitement to discrimination, and domestic violence.
Moldova did not fully implement any of the 15 recommendations on combating torture and ill treatment made during the second cycle of UPR. One of the biggest problems remains the poor organization of the medical service in the penitentiary system, which does not have the capacity to provide medical care in line with the international standards. Another serious problem is deaths in prisons. The mortality rate from medical causes is high. Compared to previous years, the numbers of deaths in the penitentiary system has increased. The Republic of Moldova fails to provide sufficient and adequate medical care in the penitentiary system and to solve the problem of overcrowding and inadequate material conditions in pretrial detention facilities. We ask the honorable delegates to urge the Republic of Moldova, first, to follow the recommendations of the UN Committee Against Torture and recommendations made under the UPR to develop a public policy ensuring the transfer of the medical units from the National Administration of Penitentiaries to the Ministry of Health. And second, to reduce overcrowding, particularly through the wider application of non-custodial measures as an alternative to imprisonment in the light of the United Nations Standard Minimum Rules for Non-Custodial Measures, so-called Tokyo Rules.
The human rights situation in the Transnistria region has worsened. About 2,000 people are illegally deprived of liberty and detained in inhuman conditions. Since 2016, at least 15 people, journalists, civic and political activists, and even simple residents of the region have been and continue to be persecuted for criticizing regional administration. Regional regulations on non-profit organizations and the fight against extremism best characterize the systemic attempts of the de facto regional administration to limit fundamental freedoms, such as freedom of expression, assembly, and association. People responsible for serious abuses are not punished, and impunity is pervasive. We ask the honorable delegates to urge the Republic of Moldova to take concrete steps to facilitate unconditional access of the national and international human rights monitoring mechanism to the Transnistria region.
During Moldova's second UPR in 2016, no recommendations were made regarding the impact of the criminal law against drug use. Penalizing drug use has a disproportionate impact on the right to health of drug users. The proposed solution is a treatment and rehabilitation, not a punishment. In this regard, I would like to point out the following issues of concern. First, the punitive measures against drug use in Moldova. Second, the lack of alternatives to conviction or punishment for drug use-related offenses. And third, the lack of integrated medical and social services for drug use offenders. Drug laws focus on drug users rather than on traffickers. Official data on crimes proves that most of the cases investigated by the criminal prosecutions bodies in the field of drugs fall under the category of the least severe and minor crimes. These crimes relate to consumption of drugs and not with trafficking. We ask the honorable delegates to urge the Republic of Moldova to develop integrated medical and social services for drug use offenders and to amend laws, regulations and policies so that they explicitly provide the possibility of applying drug treatment as an alternative to punishment for drug use-related offenses.
The Moldovan authorities have mimicked a process of consultations and negotiations on the draft law on prejudice-motivated crimes. Thus, the impunity for hate speech leads to its continued use. The lack of disaggregated data makes it impossible to establish the necessary actions to protect victims of hate speech and prejudice-motivated crimes. We ask the honorable delegates to urge the Republic of Moldova to finalize and adopt the draft law number 301 from 2016 on prejudice-motivated crimes and to develop mechanisms for monitoring and collecting disaggregated data on hate speech and prejudice-motivated crimes.
In 2016, the authorities decriminalized the acts of physical violence resulting in insignificant harm to the bodily integrity of a family member. These legislative changes discourage women from reporting cases of violence, and the number of criminal and misdemeanor cases initiated for domestic violence remains small. As a result, legislative gaps and systemic problems lead to impunity for aggressors. We ask the honorable delegates to urge the Republic of Moldova to amend the Criminal Code and the Contravention Code in order to increase the sanctions applied in cases of domestic violence in accordance with international standards.